Hi, everybody. My name is John Lynn. I'm one of the co-founders of WEVE and Cela Acceleration. We build startup accelerators in partnership with other groups for startups all over the world and inside the US. We have over 300 alumni that have been through our programs who have gone on to raise over $870 million. And today, we are talking with one of them, Amit. He's going to tell us a little bit about his journey, his company, his learnings from the experience, and what's next for the business. So,
Wonderful. Thanks a lot. Hi, everybody. My name is Amit Jalali. I'm the founder and CEO of Yoda Tech. Started in Singapore in 2020. Moved over to Princeton, New Jersey a couple of years back. And, well, here we are. Thanks a lot for that.
Amit.
Looking forward to the conversations.
Yes, me too. Thanks a lot for joining. We know you're busy. You're doing something really unique at Yoda Tech, and we've been proud to work with you in our program. So, very excited to tell the audience more about what you've got going on there. Can you give us a quick overview on Yoda Tech?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm building a tech company that's going to be run by robots. So sounds interesting. No human intervention, no technical guys. Completely driven end-to-end by a set of robots. So I call this concept microbots. So we're building close to around 3,000 microbots that are going to run IT for global enterprises. Now, traditionally, that's been run by some of the largest companies and players in the world, which includes companies like IBM, Accenture, TCS, Infosys, etc. They're global players, they're Indian heritage players, and I intend to build a complete structure using technical software bots.
Wow. So, want to talk more, hear more about what that means, how it works, what you've done so far, but would really love to get an idea more about where you're coming from. What were you doing before entrepreneurship, and then what made you start wanting to walk this path?
Yes, I've had a very interesting journey. Interestingly, so I started my career in China, where I spent 5 years running a process consulting firm. I moved out of China in 2007, and so therefore I can speak a little bit Mandarin, which I say that if you can speak Hindi, you can speak English, you can speak Mandarin, you can speak to 75% of the world's population. So, moved over from China and moved to Singapore. Spent a few years there at a very large IT services firm called HCL. It's India's third largest IT services firm. So that's where I really got the hang of what IT is all about and how are large enterprises, the global enterprises, running their IT centers. Moved on from there, moved to Australia, did the same work for other global players. Also started a company that makes digital banks. Spent a few years in Sydney. It's a beautiful place. Moved back to Singapore, worked for a startup doing big data. Moved out from there, went back to HCL, spent a few years there, and then I decided to go back to entrepreneurship after that. So the idea is that over the last 20 years in my career, I've moved across from consulting to products, software products, to IT services. And therefore, I've seen an end-to-end view of how the global leaders or the global enterprises are able to structure their business and able to structure their IT together to be able to do it.
And that's kind of where the origin of Yoda Tech was born.
So the idea was that it's been in the works for 45, 50 years. Technology's been ruling the roost of most of the larger enterprises in the world. And what we've done is aggregated all that human intelligence over the last 45 years, which for many years people like me have been very closely involved in building, and built robots that will replicate that intelligence. So we're saying that you will probably not need thousands of people running your IT in various different parts of the world. You're going to have 1,000 or 2,000 robots that's going to replicate the similar intelligence at a very, very high level to give you the freedom and space to be creative on your own and not to worry about how your IT is running.
Perfect. And that's kind of the moment I want to hone in on for a second is how you found that vision. because something must have happened in 2020 that kind of triggered your understanding that, okay, this is the direction things are going. This is what I need to invest my skills in as an entrepreneur. Was there a moment like that in 2020? How did this come together?
I think 2020 was a time of vision for a lot of people. I think COVID gave everybody an opportunity to take a step back, and while they're spending there cooling their heels at their home, gave them an opportunity not to travel, sit back, put their feet up, and think what they're doing. So the idea was generated from a point of view that generally and in many countries, it's some of the brightest talent in that country join the tech firms. That's how traditionally it's been. So you look at my country, India. Traditionally, it's been the smartest of the lot. The people with the best degrees, people across engineering, engineers, people who are top in the top universities, right? They went ahead and joined technology. Unfortunately, 80 to 90% of those folks who join the tech firms end up doing operations in tech. That means they're not doing anything creatively new. They're supporting what somebody has built 10 years back. That's where 80% of the global business that the larger players have traditionally run. That means you don't have any time for creativity. You're just running operations. So the idea was that we've got this millions of extremely bright people whose role should actually be futuristic. They should be building new stuff. They should not be worried about what's been done 20 years back. So what's been done 10, 20 years back should be run by robots. What you as a human should do is be creative. Build stuff new. Build things not thought before. Look at the challenges that the world is facing. And don't worry about the past. Look in the future and see what you can do. You can only do that if you have time at your side. If you're running behind operations, you're not going to have any time available to you to be able to sit back and think. So my idea was the bots are going to give you the time to think. So take a step back, look at the challenges that the world is facing in the future, and build that. Don't worry about what's been already done 20 years ago. Let the bots and let the automation run that.
Well, I think that certainly makes sense for us all, given the role and the emergence of AI in the last 2 years. And it's incredible that you had that understanding well before us, the rest of us. What was the first thing you did to get started?
I spoke to a couple of clients who I had been working with for many years. I explained my idea to them. I think any senior management in any major firm, if you speak to, will tell you that they are tired of hiring and training and seeing people leave, and then new tech guys joining, retraining them, then watching them leave again. And what they want is a sustainable, low-cost alternative to running the whole system in a smart manner.
Which is the biggest cost to any business?
Which in their budget cycle is 70% of the cost. So if you can pitch that in a better manner, they are willing to invest. So my initial clients, which are still global multinational companies, they put in their money on the table and said, we will invest. We may not be able to do it well, but then that's the point of investments and not knowing where the future is. And they stood by us.
Like make an equity investment, or they'll invest in your services?
Invest in building it in their enterprises. So you don't have to build anything in a lab and hope that it works in the real world. You build it in the real world, and we test it in the real world, and if it works for a large company in one place, it will most probably work for many other larger companies. So they allowed their organizations to have the first impact. That means that whatever was built very specifically for them. So they really got the benefit of the whole innovation that was done. And they enjoyed the benefit and they enjoyed the journey along with it. And everybody learned a little bit more than what they were doing previously. So the first few companies were very gracious. That means that they paid for it. So it wasn't done free. I'm a profit-making startup. So I'm one of those companies.
Almost an oxymoron.
I speak about it with venture caps, and somehow the first thing they say is, "Why are you profitable? So why are you putting the money back?" But then I'm old school in some of my thought processes. So the idea was they put in the money, we worked with the large players, and we got it implemented, and we saw the impact. And the impact that we saw was phenomenal. We were able to reduce the cost by 80%. You can imagine a company that is spending 5 to 7% of its global revenue on IT is able to reduce its spend by 80%. That's a significant bottom line improvement, which is absolutely one of the most amazing things.
You tell that stuff to the board.
You tell that to the board. So it's a senior management play. The senior management gets it. And like everything else, it's about when you hit the road, how do you conceptualize it? How do you build it? How do you navigate it? That's the learning experience, which we've done.
So, want to ask a little bit more in two specific areas. One is the customer and getting these first clients in place, because I think, especially for the newer entrepreneurs in the audience, hearing how that conversation comes first a lot of the time before the product, before the service is so important. The other thing I want to ask quickly about is timing. How important do you think it was that you started these conversations in 2020 when there was organizations of all kinds were questioning the future, were questioning their costs, were questioning their organizational structures? Do you think that timing played a role in the openness of these organizations to experiment with this?
You know what, interestingly, my view is that people are always open to experiment, irrespective of time. In fact, I think COVID made it very open for them to investigate the future. Because I think everybody saw a very existential threat in their business model at that particular point of time. And when you are facing an existential threat, and you know you may not even have a 3-month, 6-month viability, your willingness and your desire to be open about taking excessive risk at a particular point of time is way much more faster. I think COVID gave you that drive to say, you know what, there can't be a better time than this to try out something new. Because if I'm not going to do something new as it is, I may not survive. So might as well go for it. So I think timing definitely helped. But that said, I don't think the founders should wait for a time. I think the moment you know that you're different, there will always be people who will be willing to invest in the model that you have.
So I guess that kind of segues nicely into the second question, which is, how do you tap into that openness to experiment? You say that you believe as an entrepreneur it exists in everyone. It exists in our users for our products. It exists in our clients for our services. But how do you evoke that openness to experiment, or how did you get those conversations started with these clients?
You know, I hate to say it, but that's trust. And trust is built over time. And if you spent long enough years in the industry, you would have built that kind of a trust with a few selected people and players in the market who are relevant and important. And that trust is built over time. And once you do that, I think the ability for them to be willing to go the extra mile with you is there. So it's not an easy pill. I don't think anybody can just walk in the market and say, I'm gonna go for the big players. Which is also what you would realize is a lot of startups and a lot of product companies, they first go to the SME sector. Easier to get in, not a long enough procurement process, not complex enough for them to figure out the way. And you go piecemeal, small, till the time you got 10,000 small companies, and they say, now I will go for an enterprise. We did not take that route at all. We just straight away went to the enterprises. And that's because we are 250 people, out of which a very significant bunch of people have been there in the industry for 20 years. Many of us have built these models that we're talking about for 20 years.
You've done it together at Yoda Tech.
We are all there. We carry a credibility among some of the larger enterprises because many of them have worked with us for 20 years in different capacity. They've seen us grow. They've seen us perform when shit hits the roof. They know whether we will be standing when problems happen, we'll go away when problems happen. They may not have seen us as startups, but they have seen us over time. So The quality of people that are standing along with you in this journey is 90% of the problem. You get that thing
Trust
sorted out.
is so important.
You will figure a way out to answer the difficult questions. You don't have the team to back you and team with credibility and the team with quality. You're always going to face problems. How you deal with the problem is the maturity that you bring to the play. And that's what companies at enterprise level looks at. They don't look at you coming in and saying, I'm going to solve all your problems in 1 month. No. They're going to say whether these are people who will stay with me when the big shit happens. And are they going to be able to sustain an enterprise of my side when there's a problem? I think that's where the credibility begins.
I mean, again, the order of operations for how you pull together your first opportunities as an entrepreneur is different for all of us.
Yep.
I think the components of finding your customer and then building your team are the two most important. So also want to hear a little bit about how you started building the team once you got these conversations in place. But one thing I want to pull out from what you just said is the importance of trust, right? And statistically in the United States, the vast majority of successful entrepreneurs are doing it as a second career, right? They've established their credibility in a profession, in an industry, in a space, in a technology on another team, in the earlier parts of their career. And you described a pretty incredible journey across much of Asia and building out those experiences, those skills, and that credibility. But the narrative of entrepreneurship is so dominated by this, rebellious undergrad raising VC money, and that exists, that happens, but it's really not the most common narrative. And so I think it's refreshing to hear how that came together for you. So once you got these first contracts or conversations going, you needed to deliver. You needed to keep that trust. So you needed to bring on the right people. And how do you convince great people because great people have the opportunity to work at a lot of places, right? Great people are not tied down to what they're doing right now. They're there because they want to be. So who were the first people that came to mind that you wanted to bring onto your team, and how did you approach them?
Actually, the first few people who came on board had absolutely no relationship with me. That's also because I was very scared to tap into a set of talent that I'm already aware of and people that I'm already personally connected is a very big commitment. Because if something goes wrong, you're directly impacting their career. So, and if you've got a personal network and a personal connection, it becomes even more problematic,
fast, yeah.
right? And specifically in Asia, all right? In US, probably not. The level of openness towards taking a risk is way more in US than when it comes to Asia. In Asia, it becomes very personal. It becomes very family connected, so you're aware of everything. So the first few people that I hired, who are still everybody with me still, they were purely professionals who I approached with a specific idea and said, this is what I want to build. They also knew that they will have 1 year of visibility because they said, we don't know, looks good, may not survive, may survive, let's give it a try. I think if you talk to them right now, they said 6 months to 1 year is what we gave you in terms of your ability to run and manage. And once we got that running, then things really hit off. I think it comes with your confidence as a founder. And the more confident you are, it shows in your body language. When you speak to clients, when you speak to senior management, when you speak to prospective employees, and that's when you would go to them and say, you know what, I think I've done it. I know what I'm doing. I've shown it successful. Would you like to be a part of it? I think that conversation is much more easier. And then it again comes back to trust. 40% of our team members have worked with each other in the past. Their ability to go back to their ability to go back to their friend circle and say, it's trustworthy. Don't worry. We got your back. Join. And that's when you know who those people are, what skill do they bring to the table, and whether we can work with them in the long term. And that's over time got built, replicated and consolidated as an enterprise, which is why it's 250 people, it's profitable, no funding raised till date, which I'm very proud of, and it's just working.
Yeah. Well, it's such a great story. Already some great experience, great learnings here, especially in terms of some of the differences between Asia and the U.S. And there are several of our key clients that we build accelerators with that aren't Asian institutions, whether a government corporation or something else. And so we're seeing the big differences between how these founders are challenged to operate in their origin market and then coming into the U.S. And it seems, no matter where you're coming from, the U.S. is a very, unique snowflake in terms of business culture. And I think you're right. I've definitely had myself co-founder relationships not work out, employee relationships not work out, customer relationships not work out, and it's not always something that breaks the relationship, right? Sometimes it is, but it's not necessarily something that has to be or that has to damage your reputation. So
You're speaking from
experience,
you're speaking from personal
yeah,
experience.
you can tell. But given all that experience and this incredible story, want to understand what parts of that journey have been meaningful to you, and I want to hear some of the good and some of the bad. So, can you give me the?
I'll tell you something which is very confrontational.
Okay.
A lot of people will not agree with it. The general motive, the general conversations when it comes to startups is get people together, let's get everybody to understand, let's have the vision understood. I think all that is great. Till the time you run and you touch $10 million ARR, it has to be a dictatorship. You cannot be hearing everybody's view. You got to put a stop to it and you say it's my way. And you got to go with the conviction of your way. And you have to enforce it. Yes, personal relationships will get impacted at that particular point of time, but over time people understand the fact that you cannot have a democracy when you're smaller. You can't have too many people calling the shots, too many people sitting in a committee and meeting and trying to figure out how they can collaboratively work together. You're wasting your time. Till you run a $10 million, your personal relationships are a factor of you're the dictator and everybody's known to you. Follow the way, and I'm trusting that you're following the way that I'm telling you. If it doesn't work, you're the founder, you're the one who's going to be held responsible, nobody else. So stand by your conviction, stand by your thought, push it through. And you'll see the fact that your outcomes have a direct correlation to the success that you will have. The moment you will start thinking, I may not have all the answers, or my views are probably not the best views, let me hear everybody's views. It's a great idea. I don't think it is going to help you survive in the long term.
So part of one of the bigger learnings that you've had is that leadership is crucial. And even when you're challenged to have a vision for something that maybe you haven't invested a lot of time in figuring out or knowing that you've got to at least be the person that starts with the way forward. And I agree to an extent with this. We actually started as a nonprofit,
Yep.
almost 10 years ago, and the reason that we're for profit is because that's the kind of opportunity we're looking at. It's a profitable opportunity, but also because for-profit can be a much clearer structure to operate in, right? There's clear decision making, there's clear objectives, there's clear reporting and transparency, especially in the U.S. So do you have a moment that you can tell us, what was a specific moment where that kind of leadership was needed and you enforced it?
And I think every startup founder will probably have a very similar experience. I think that kind of moment happens almost every day initially. I think at that particular point of time, every decision feels like it could probably be the end of the company. So you would weigh every viewpoint extremely uniquely and go across and take actions. But there was another point that you talked about US. You know, and I look at myself having an experience of multiple countries, having stayed there, experienced the culture, and experienced work. I can tell you, it's absolutely refreshing to work in US. Right? It's very clear. There's no ulterior motive. You know, you are what you are. Right? There's no layers behind you. If you say something, you're gonna do it. If you say I'm not gonna do it, I know you're not gonna do it. Let's just move on. The very fact that the folks in US are very open about expressing what they're intending to do just makes the working relationship so much more simpler and clearer than the traditional Asian way in which you don't know eventually what's going to happen. You know, person may say something but may mean something else because of the way the culture is, right? Because you can't be very open and very rough on the go, because Asians are not supposed to be that rough. They're supposed to smoothen it down. While in US, if they don't like you, they will tell you, I don't like you. I don't think this is making sense. Thanks a lot for your time.
I'm not
Appreciate
buying
it.
Yeah.
And as a founder, it saves you many, many months of working around it and trying to figure out what's happening.
Nothing like a good no.
Absolutely. And trust me, we have seen enough no's in our life not to take it to heart. So say, guys, if you have a no, just give me a no.
Yeah. I mean, it's an exercise that we do in many of our programs is, it's cultural sort of awareness exercise. And what we do is, take everybody's culture, the nationality of all the founders in the cohort. When we have a multinational cohort, sometimes it's just one country, sometimes it's many founders coming from many countries. When it's founders coming from many countries, it's this exercise where we go from, okay, how much context is required?
Yep.
Is usually the measure. So if we're in the US, how much context is required to understand the sentence that's being said? If we're in Saudi Arabia, how much context is required to understand the sentence that's being said? And it's a great way of sort of breaking down the different ways that communication occurs, because when it matters a lot, who's saying what, where, and when, with who else in the room, you begin to think about conversations in a different way. So really helpful for you to bring that up.
I would just like to add a little bit to it. I think some of the sessions that I've attended along with WEVE Accelerator were absolutely fantastic about it. I don't know how many people got the viewpoint, but when you organize sessions for startups like us as part of the GIA program and the Singapore Exposure Program, one of the first sessions that you did was the cultural sensitivity. And I think people take cultural sensitivity as a soft topic and say, they'll tell us that you should be aware of cultures, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the hidden thought processes behind the speakers and the guests who talked about the cultural experiences in the US context is absolutely important for Asians to understand.
Super helpful to hear that.
You get that view, that's half your business model. Because if you get that view on how to approach and how to expect and what to expect, you sorted that out. The remaining is your PPTs and your presentations and your work that you're doing, which is operational.
Sure.
But changing the focus from an Asia or a Middle Eastern-led viewpoint into an American viewpoint is one of the best things that I had in your accelerator program. I thought that was amazing.
Now, we've only got a couple minutes left, but I want to pull out one of my favorite questions here, and it's one of the most difficult.
That went fast.
It's a lot of fun, right? At least when it's going well. So, can you take us into one of your favorite, most positive moments in building the company, and one of the worst moments in building the company?
I think the positive moment is the high. We signed up with the world's top 3 largest pharma, one of the largest companies in UK by market cap, company the size of $30 billion market cap, $50 billion market cap. I think the high is the fact that you get a yes from a global CIO in the first 20 minutes. He just gets it. He says, I think I like what you're doing. Go ahead. 20 minutes. It doesn't need months. People tell me how, as a startup, you got some of the largest companies in the world to sign up with you. 20 minutes. I can tell you, no pitch had been more than 20, 30 minutes. 15 minutes, they said, yeah, makes sense, go ahead. Give it a shot.
So
That's the high you can't beat.
I've described it as, I agree. The way I've said it is good things happen fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a specific one of those moments that you can tell us about?
Whew. Yep. So of course it's remote, and a lot of conversations you're having is remote. So you really don't see the facial expression of the person that you're talking to. And we were having this conversation with one of the world's largest government fund, okay, and they were in a VC room in their offices, 5,000 miles away from us. And we were having this conversation. It was 3:00 in the morning for me, and it was Asia time for them, and I'm half asleep and I'm pitching, right? And the global executive leadership was sitting on the other side, and I could barely see them, right? I mean, from the video conferencing view. But I think within 10 minutes, and I had my leadership team also sitting with me, I think in the 10 to 15th minute of the conversation, they stopped, they all looked at each other, and that's the only thing I could see, that they're looking at each other, and every one of them nodded, okay, that this is good. And they said, guys, go ahead.
And you knew.
You couldn't see anybody's face, but you could see everybody's head was shaking when they were talking to each other. And 5,000 miles away, 3:00 in the morning, half asleep, trying to figure out what's happening on the other side of the room, whether you're getting to it or not. Either that was the time when you say, and these are people I had never met in my life. 15 minutes. That's when you know your model is okay. Because now you're not talking to people who know you. Now you're talking to people who don't know you, are one of the largest players in the world. They are the best of the companies coming to them and talking to them about all the innovative ideas in the world. And they took 15 minutes to listen to your viewpoint and said, go ahead. Looks good.
The value proposition speaks for itself.
Go ahead, implement. Looks good. I think that's when it really hits you that you can scale it up even when you don't know the people. And that's the pattern that I wanted to reach to.
Also such a great learning. All right, last two questions.
Sure.
What's been one of the hardest moments?
Can you just scooch over a bit? You're moving slightly. Okay, perfect.
Sorry, yeah. Hardest moments.
Last couple questions. One of the hardest moments, and then one of your learnings or piece of advice for the entrepreneurs out there.
I think the hard moments are when people you have really invested in leave. And they would leave for a reason that you don't understand. And initially you take it very personally. And that's my feedback, and that's my suggestions to a lot of founders. Don't take it personal. A lot of us have invested a lot of time and effort in bringing up people and bringing up their talent, because many of them don't carry the talent that we're looking at. So you have to build it up. Because you're trying to do something new. If everybody was able to do something new, they would have already done it. They're not. So you have built it over time, and you have changed their mindset, and then they leave. Don't take it personally. It happens. Move on. Separate your personal emotions from professional life. And the faster you do that, the better it is for you as well as everybody else in your company. Don't take it personally. I'll tell you another very controversial statement that I personally believe in. People keep saying that you have to be very passionate as an entrepreneur. It's your company, you have to be very passionate. Actually, you don't have to be passionate. It's a profession. You have to be very good at it. Mm. You can be very passionate about solving world hunger, about removing homelessness from the world, about solving cancer. That you could be very passionate. It's an esoteric aim. You can't be passionate about making robots that's going to replicate IT operations. You can be very good at it. So I think remove passion from the equation, bring professionalism and outcome-based delivery into the picture. Remove personal commitments out of it. Remove those personal traits out of it. Keep it very professional. You will bankroll the whole thing.
I think that's so that's such a great idea to end on because, especially as I look at the hundreds of entrepreneurs that we've worked with, but also look at myself as an entrepreneur, right? The amount of stress I would have been able to save myself if I could have said, don't worry about what's not in your control.
Yeah.
And you're never going to be in control of how someone else thinks, feels, acts, decides.
Absolutely.
So it's a muscle that you build. It's a skill of professionalism and entrepreneurship, I think. But thank you, Amit. We'll have to stop there. But let's end by hearing a little bit about what's next for Yoda Tech. What have you got coming up, and what can we all sort of support you on?
Well, I think you guys have been extremely supportive. So already, I think the kind of exposure that you've given us over the last 3-4 months has been fantastic. Things are looking extremely good. We are right now. We've reached a situation in my company in which I no longer remember the people's names, which I thought will never happen. Right? I was somebody who knew everybody's families, how many kids they got, how old are they, where have they worked earlier. I used to be very proud of the fact that I knew everybody. Now I don't recognize some of the names, and I realize that it's reaching a level in which it's a different mindset to get into. And I think that's where I really enjoyed some of the sessions, because I think while your sessions were geared towards bringing people into the US market, I took it as an opportunity to say, what are the things I'm missing to grow from A to B? And I was able to take on a lot of points about how not to enter into A, but I'd already done A, I've already reached this level, I want to take it to the next stage. And I think that's where a lot of the sessions, a lot of support that, the mentors and the sessions that were there, really, really very thought-provoking. So it was immense effort. I must tell you, a lot of notes I've taken from our sessions of your mentors and the trainers, and it's really helped. Things are going very well.
Great.
We have now decided that we're going to pursue a Series A, having achieved success at a particular level. We are now looking at ramping up the success. Our platform is built, our software tech is built, it's proven successful. We now realize that we can ramp up. So we want to take one step forward in building towards a Series A.
Which is a new thing for Yoda Tech, right? Never taken outside capital.
Never taken capital, never needed capital, running profitably. But this month, we've decided that we're going to go ahead. We're talking to a few venture caps that understand the enterprise B2B market, and we're working along with them. So
huge news.
That's a different level.
So the investors out there have their first chance to become part of the Yoda Tech story. So,
hit me up. Come to Princeton. It's a beautiful city.
We'll introduce you. Thanks so much.
Absolute pleasure.
You've got a busy
Thanks
day
a lot,
today,
man.
but we appreciate you taking part, and good to hear more about your story.
It's always good to meet up with you, buddy.
Thanks, everybody. WEVE Acceleration has applications for its GIA Singapore program, which Amit and Yoda Tech were a part of, open right now. It's important for you founders that are considering the program or considering the US market to get that conversation started as soon as possible. The longer you wait, the more competitive it gets, and there's a lot of companies that are interested in making this move through the accelerator. So get in touch with us now, apply at the link provided. We also very much appreciate Serendipity Labs, a co-working space where we are shooting and producing this podcast. They have spaces all across New York City and beyond. So we recommend any entrepreneur out in the audience get in touch with Serendipity Labs when they need a place to work and progress.
Enterprises have always been divided between the known and unknown. The unknown drives the future ideas and strategy, while the known covers the investments already made that needs to be sustained. No one is immune to the global tech talent shortage. It continues to be the single biggest factor, top of mind, of every CXO when looking at building new ideas. Welcome to the world of microbots by Yoda Tech. We at Yoda Tech have dissected and deconstructed the human and technical actions stretching across thousands of IT processes to create a micro blueprint of the thought process that goes into how technical resolutions are decided and implemented. The years of investment in ITSM systems continues to be the hub for collaboration and process, while microbots move in as the control room to collate the cognitive and procedural learning to build the key to unlock, democratize, and mass replicate the global IT operations ecosystem. In itself, a single microbot may seem insignificant, but when it combines with all the other microbots into a set of operational actions, it runs and manages most of IT operations as a perfect symphony of steps, checklists, standard operating processes, tasks, and data. A 24/7 global IT operations center servicing end-user computing, digital workplace, compute, storage, hosting, application operations that will be run by bots maintaining a vastly superior end-user service experience, cost reduction to never-seen levels, and 100% process adherence levels. Built entirely on Microsoft Power Platform also ensures reusing your current tech environment to deliver the services and having all bots and actions staying in the same environment where you currently have your Office 365 emails, SharePoint documents, Teams chats, etc. Reusing